Could you share with me your methods for documentation? Do you have testing software that handles this? Do you have a homegrown solution? So let's get into it. So this question is about documentation. And it says, hey, fellow testers, could you share with me your methods for documentation? Do you have testing software that handles this? Do you have a homegrown solution? My team uses Jira for sprint management. My testing just goes in the comments section of the story. I have a graph I use to format, and the graph goes like this: test case ID, title, description, expected results, actual results, pass or fail. I would love to hear what others are doing. If anyone has insight with using Jira to track everything, that's all the better. Thanks, everyone. So that is a amazing question, right? So let's get rid of this. All right. So here is the deal when it comes to testing, right? Or documentation for our testing. Okay. So there are different. There's many different ways to document and to test. I've the way I've done it in the past is I've combined different I've combined different strategies in order to be able to create my QA documentation. So we're gonna break it down. We're gonna break it down like this, right? So we are going to do the different ways that I've done it, and then we're going to do the different ways that I've done it, and then we're going to do how I've combined them so we can have proper documentation, right? So I've used software. So okay, I'll start with this. The way that I think was the best that I've done it is there was a test case management software that I used where you would store the test cases, like the steps that you would go through to reproduce, to go through the, the software that you're doing the QA on, and it would also manage the test runs. And when you would trigger the automated test, it would log the results of the automated test inside of the software, right? And then we updated what we like since we're using Java with the TestNG listener, we updated the listener to keep track of all the steps that were being followed, right? So as the test cases are running, where the steps that is doing the automated tests are doing, it would log it, so we would be able to see where it failed, right? So we're able to report on the test cases. We're able to report on the test runs, that whether you're doing it manually or whether you're doing it automated, you're able to see the results of like where the test failed, and you're able to see and you're able to like run reports to see like how the test did and everything like that. So that's how we. So that was my favorite way of managing like the documentation, because that way you had the documentation for the actual test, for the actual requirements. We had the documentation for the test runs, right? So that's one way. That was, I think that was the best way. Although it is kind of pricey because the software that we're using to do all of that, it wasn't free, so you had to pay for it, and all that good stuff, right? So now, the way some other ways that I've done it is using. So the way that I like the least is like having those Excel spreadsheets that have that you manage the test cases, because they're all locally. They have to be saved somewhere. But the way that I've also done it was using Google Sheets, and it's a way of doing it. I'm not particularly fond of that way because the visibility, and let's say you have each test case in its own Google Sheet, like trying to find it becomes a mess. Honestly, I think having a database to store the test cases is a much better way of doing it. And then, like, let's say there's different teams that are working. Having a centralized repository for your company for your test cases, to me, is a much more optimal solution, because anyone can access it. and like as long as they have the proper permissions, anyone can access it and they can see what's going on. To me, it's just better, right? To be able to have that central repository. Not everything is not in a silo, right? So that's how I would say. And then you can also use that for your documentation. So your test case, because I've used like the test cases that I've written for documentation to provide to clients on how the software works, all of that stuff. And so that's in particular to documenting the test cases. And then like if you have a test case management software that can connect to your automation scripts, then that's all the better. If not, like I was mentioning about earlier about the report portal QA metrics implementation, that is also a wonderful way to document the results of your tests as well. So follow along for that live stream, and you'll see how we implement that and how the test gets documented. So those are the some ways to document it. Also, you said you mentioned that you're using Jira. I know Jira does have test case management plugins. I don't remember what they call them in Jira, but there's things to manage test cases. So you can if there, from my understanding, like everything for Jira is based on the amount of users that you have. So that can be costly as well. So you'd have to investigate that. But I would say that the way that you're currently doing it of logging the test cases inside the comments of the tickets of your Jira stories, that's probably the worst way that you can ever do it, because how are you going to keep track of that? Like there's no centralized location, and you have to go back and like dig through the tickets, update the comments. Like if that's the case, like you would be better off storing them in a Excel or a Google Sheets, and then linking the location, like linking that file or URL to your story. But having the test cases inside the story itself, that's not going to work out for you. There's no way of searching that. There's no way of tracking it. And if the story is not on in your sprint, in your backlog, if it's closed, like it's going to be so hard to go back and look for that. So I would not recommend that at all. I would say find a new way immediately. One thing to mention is that we are going to be implementing our own test case management solution, where when I say our own, like we're going to find one, we're going to install it the same way that we do with Report Portal, the same way that we do with like we did with Docker, with whatever that we're using. We're going to implement it so that way that can be part of your portfolio, where you show in your interviews that you've created a test case management system where you are documenting and tracking the test cases that you've done for your clients, and when I say clients, those are the sites that we go through and we analyze and we automate to build our portfolio, and you log it there, and that way you can show that yes, like you're forward thinking about how you are documenting and how you are reporting and all that good stuff, right? So look out for that live stream that'll be coming in the near future. But that's how so those are the different ways that I use for documentation, for tracking my test cases and my run results and how the automated tests run. So great question, I must say.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.